Good morning, this is Mr. Morales, and I'll be going over the review for the 9 weeks exam. So beginning with question number 1, we are asked to find all the relevant information about the following line that has been graphed below. So going from left to right, let's see, we're asked to find our slope first. So I'll begin with the most obvious point, which will be our y-intercept, which is right here at the y-axis. So our y-intercept is at 0, 3, because it's at 3 units above the origin. Next, we're asked to find the slope, so I'll pick another point on this graph that's easy to read, and right here I have another point, and I can just simply find my rise and my run. I go up 1 point, or 1 unit, and I go to the right 1, 2, 3. Therefore, my slope, which we call m, is equal to the rise of 1 unit and the run of positive 3 units. So 1/3 is my slope. Next, I'm asked to find my 0, or my x-intercept right here. So if I follow the graph until it hits the x-axis, and it hits the x-axis right here at -9, 0. So there's my x-intercept. My domain now is how far to the left and how far to the right my graph goes. Well, the graph has arrow tips, which means it goes infinitely to the left and infinitely to the right. So from negative infinity to positive infinity. Or in other words, we can just say it's all real numbers. Next, we're asked to find the range. The range of the graph is how high the graph goes. Well, since the arrow tips on the end indicate it goes forever in both those directions, we have a slant down to the left and a slant right up. So it goes infinitely down as well as infinitely up. Or in other words, the range is also all real numbers. And then is our graph increasing or decreasing? You read all graphs from left to right. This graph is increasing from left to right. So there's our answer for that. Moving on to the next question. Number 2. We are asked to find the slope of the line that passes through the given points. So we have 6, -11, and 9, 17. In other words, we have an x1 and a y1, and a second x point and a second y point. The slope formula, in case you don't remember, is equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. When I substitute my appropriate values in, I get 17 minus -11 in my numerator, and 9 minus 6 in my denominator, for a result of 28 over 3. This cannot be simplified anymore, and we do not make mixed fractions for slope, so 28/3 is my final answer. Following the same process over here, I remember that this is x1, y1, x2, y2. Therefore, if I use the slope formula, I'll get 11 minus 8 on the top, and in the denominator, I will get 25 minus a -12. Make sure to put those in parentheses when you use your calculator, so that way the signs come out correct. 11 minus 8 on top gives me a +3, and on the bottom I get a +37. 37 is prime, so it's 3. It cannot be simplified anymore, so our slope is just simply 3 over 37. Next, we have some graphing to do. We have 3 lines, A, B, and C, and we're asked to graph each one. So the first line, you could go ahead and isolate y, but since you have your calculators, I'll show you how to do it with the calculator. We're asked to graph 2x minus 3y equals 12. So in my calculator, which I'll clear out right now, I'm over here on Scratchpad. Because it's in standard form with the x and y on the same side, you have to delete and graph this as a relation. So when I enter my equation, I get 2x minus 3y is equal to 12. Enter. And there's my line. So I need at least 2 points to make a good line. To get my first point, I'll get the y-intercept. So pressing menu 5-1, graph trace, I get my y-intercept at 0, -4. So I know that my b is at -4. So -1, 2, 3, 4. Here's my first point. Now I need to find one other point. I'll go ahead and just right arrow until I get another compatible, easy to graph point. Oh, I had one right there. 3, -2. Let's see if I can get maybe an x-intercept to get an even better, more accurate line. 6, 0, there we go, perfect. So if I go over to 6, 0, I get my second point, and I'll set that 3, -2 in between, And now I can go ahead and just create my line. So with your straight edge, you'll make your line. Don't forget to include your arrow tips. Your line will look better than mine. And go ahead and just move on to the next one. Next, we already have an equation in slope-intercept form. Our slope is whatever number's in front of x. -2, which I'll make a fraction, is -2/1, and +6 is my y-intercept. So I go to +6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, +6. My slope is -2/1, which means down 2 squares, right 1. I repeat that process to get all the points that will fit on this graph. And then I will also repeat the process in reverse to get the points that came before it. I can now use my straight edge and make a line that goes through all these points, including arrow tips on both ends. And there's my line. For part C now, I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of distributive property to make my equation a little more manageable. It's almost in slope-intercept form except for these parentheses. So if I just distribute, -2 times x is -2x. -2 times a -3 is a +6. Let me make my x a little better. +6 plus 4 more. I can combine, let me make that better, this +6 and +4, and my final equation will be y equals -2x plus 10. So using what I learned from the previous problem, I know +10 is my y-intercept, so it's right up here at the very top at +10. And then my slope is -2, or in other words, -2/1, down 2/1. So it looks very similar to the previous graph, only it's been shifted up a few units higher. So I'll go ahead and finish my line here, and then connect all my dots with arrow tips on both ends to show that it goes on in both directions infinitely. All right, next, we have questions 4a and 4b. Find the slope of the following linear equations. So this one we can do a couple of ways. I'm going to go ahead and, for the first one, I'm going to do it manually. I'm going to go ahead and get y by itself, because I know whatever's with x will be my slope once y is by itself. So to get y by itself, I'm going to go ahead and just add 3x to both sides of my equation. When I do that, this cancels out, and I have y equals that +3x that I moved over with the +10 that was there before. My slope then is whatever number's in front of x. In this case, 3. So you can say slope is 3 or 3/1, depending. Part B, I'm going to do something a little similar. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to show you how to do this with the calculator because it's in standard form. 6x minus 12y equals -16. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my calculator. I'll clear out whatever I had there, pressing Dock B. And because this is in standard form, it has to be graphed as a relation. So I'll go ahead and graph it. It's 6x minus 12y equals -16. I'm hoping my strategy I'm going to use right now is going to work. So we have a line here. What we want to do now is get the slope. So I'll go ahead and click on Menu, Analyze Graph, and then if you go down to number 5, here's a new little trick, dy dx. That means the y's, the difference in y's over the difference in x, or in other words, the slope. So you can just go to anywhere on this line, and it gives you a little pencil, but the slope's the same, and you can kind of see it in gray there. So I just click on the point, and there's my slope, 0.5, or in other words, 1/2. So you can go ahead and you can graph this as a relation. So I'll write the notes here. You can graph as a relation, and then after you graph it as a relation, you're going to go to Menu, Analyze Graph, and then you're going to go to dy dx. Let me see if I can get the number strokes for that. So it was Menu, 6, 5, and then press enter and it'll give it to you. So Menu 6, 5 is our keystrokes. Menu 6, whoops, that's like a G instead. Let me go ahead and make that a little more numeric. Menu 6, 5, and that'll give you the slope. All right, so there's a little trick for you guys. If you want to do it by hand, I can show you how to do that too, because in Algebra 2, you guys will have to do it by hand. So 6x minus 12y equals -16. I'm going to go ahead and move the y to the other side in order to make it positive. So I add 12y to both sides. When I do that, I get 6x equals 12y with that minus 16. I'll go ahead and add 16 to both sides, move that over to the other side. And now I get 6x plus 16 equals 12y. To get y by itself, I divide everything, every single term, by 12. 6 over 12 simplifies to 1/2. 16 over 12 simplifies to 4/3. And 12 over 12 simplifies to 1y. And there's my slope again, 1/2. I recommend using the calculator because it is a timed test. Moving on, word problem. So let me go ahead and put the screen up, there we go. So a computer technician will charge a $40 set fee to do a diagnostic, plus $25 an hour to work on a broken computer. Write an equation to represent this scenario. So let's write down what we know. We know a couple of things already. We have a $40 set fee for the diagnostic. So we're being charged, or the technician is making $40 right off the bat just for testing the computer to see what's wrong with it. Plus, and it says the word plus literally, $25 an hour. Whenever you have something per unit, something per hour, per minute, per mile, whatever, that's always a big indication that that's your slope. So we're going to be spending $25 for X amount of hours that he's going to work, and that'll give us our total amount. So there's our equation. Now we're asked to identify the slope and the y-intercept. We just did that. Our y-intercept then would be 40, the starting amount. Any starting amount in any word problem is always your y-intercept. Keep that in mind for this coming up exam. Your slope is what you're being charged per hour or your rate of change. In this case, we're being charged $25 per single hour. All right, so let's go ahead and graph this. On the bottom, whenever you have time involved, hours, minutes, seconds, time is always on the x-axis. And then the time determines how much money we're going to be charged. So we know that just for seeing 0 hours, just for seeing our computer, we're going to start off at an amount of $40, just taking it into this person. And then the price is only going to go up from there. So here's 40. We're starting from there. Now we can take some other, if he works just 1 hour on our computer, that's 40 plus 25, or in other words, that'd be about 65. I'm just going to approximate where I think all these amounts are. So here's 65. And then if he works for 2 hours on our computer, then that would be 25 times 2 or $50, plus 40 more would give us a total of 90. So we'll get something that looks like this. Because I don't have any numbers on the grid here, I can kind of just make my own graph as long as it's accurate in what it represents. And then of course the price would go up for every hour after that. So there's a general idea of what our graph would look like and all the questions answered. Moving on. Number 6. This one is a good one. It says draw a line that passes through the point 1,5, has a 0 slope, and is parallel to the x-axis. So let's do each thing one at a time. Has to go through the point 1,5. That means right 1 up 5. So there's our point right there. Has to have a 0 slope. Well, you have two kinds of slopes. We either have the flat or the straight up and down. These are the two special slopes at least. Everything else has a number. A 0 slope is one that goes flat left and right. Remember, undefined goes straight up and down. So keep that in mind. So we're going to have a flat left and right, or other words, horizontal line that goes through the point 1,5. And it is indeed parallel to the x-axis. The x-axis is right here. This line we just made that goes through the point 1,5 with a 0 slope is parallel to the x-axis. So there is our graph. It'll be a flat line. Let's go ahead now and do these next 3 graphs. We're asked to graph the following inequalities. Negative 3x plus y is greater than negative 1. I can graph this really easily as a relation in my calculator, but for the sake of just getting it done, I'm going to go ahead and do it manually up here because this first one is extremely easy. If I just add 3x to both sides, I already get my slope-intercept form. Y is greater than 3x minus 1. Negative 1 would be my y-intercept, so I go down to negative 1. 3, or 3 over 1, as a fraction would be my slope. Up 3 over 1, up 3 over 1, up 3 over 1. I could follow it in reverse to get all the points that came before it. Now, the inequality is greater than, in this case, And it has no equal sign underneath it, which means it's going to be a dashed or broken line that goes through these points with arrow tips at the end. Now I have to figure out which side of the shading I'm going to do. I could pick a test point and see which one makes it true, or I can just go ahead and use my calculator, which I'm going to do just to remind you guys on how to do the inequalities. So back over here, remember, you cannot graph an inequality if there's an equal sign on your screen. So delete that out. I'm going to go ahead and just graph it straight up as a relation the way it was in the beginning. And the graph was negative 3x plus y is greater than, there it is, greater than negative 1. Enter. There's my graph, and it's shaded to the left. So I'll go ahead and I will shade everything over here on the left side of my line. For B, it's already in slope-intercept form. So my y-intercept is positive 8. My slope would be 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. I can't make any more points going forward, but I can get the points that came before it by following the slope in reverse to see where it came before my first original point. Judging by the inequality symbol, which is just the less than, I'm not going to have a solid line. I'll still have a dashed line. So I'll just fill in all the spaces with dashes. Now I need to figure out which side to go ahead and shade. And once again, I'll just use my calculator to verify for me so I don't get it wrong, since I am drawing on this. And delete, remember it's a relation because you cannot graph inequalities as with equal signs in them. Y is less than 8 plus 2x. Enter. And it's going to be the right-hand side that I shade. So I go ahead and get all this over here. And finally, graph C, y is greater than x plus 4 minus 1. There's really an invisible 1 right here, so I'll go ahead and distribute everything. Y is greater than 1x, because 1 times x is 1x. 1 times positive 4 is a positive 4, and then I have minus 1. 4 minus 1 could be combined to give me a final inequality of y is greater than x plus 3. So my y-intercept is at positive 3. My slope is 1x, or really 1 over 1, so up 1 over 1. Once again, my inequality symbol does not have a half equal sign, so it's going to also be a broken or dashed line for the inequality. So I'll go ahead and just kind of fill in the little spaces with little dashes in between, arrow tips on both ends. Now to verify which side I'm going to actually be shading in, I will clean this out again on the scratch pad side, delete relation, and it's y greater than parentheses x plus 4 minus 1. Enter. And it's the upper left-hand side that I had. So I go ahead and shade everything over here on the left side. So those are my 3 graphs of my inequalities. Moving on to the next. Given the linear parent function f of x equals x, graph the function, or graph the following, excuse me. So basically, f of x equals x. So if f of x equals x, then I would have to graph x minus 2. Think of it like this then. Because f of x is the same thing as letter x. So in that case, my slope or my y-intercept would be negative 2. My slope would be 1x, or 1 over 1. So up 1 over 1, and here's my line. And I will go ahead and connect all my dots because it is a line, not an inequality. So there will be no shading either. It'll just be a nice straight linear function that's shifted 2 units below the origin, because that's what the minus 2 does. When you have x plus 5, the result of your graph is going to be a graph that is going to be 5 units higher. So if my original graph of f of x goes through the origin, then my new graph will be 5 units higher. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right here, this is what the plus 5 does. And then after I go ahead and do that, I go ahead and just move it up 1 over 1 to keep the same slope. And actually, I might have a question about this graph I'm going to come back to. I might have gone it backwards. I'm not going to lie to you guys right now. So for B, I'm going to put a question mark next to this. I'm not 1,000% sure. So you may want to make sure to do that graph in pencil, and I'm going to verify. But I'm pretty sure that's the effect. But then again, I could be mistaken. I've done a couple of these for other classes. I have to admit my rules are a little confused right now. So I'm pretty sure that'll be the result. For C, which I am sure about, this means just take the original graph of f of x equals, or y equals x basically, and make it the opposite. So if I had this graph originally, the negative sign means just to make it the opposite, so negative x. So in this case, I still go through the origin, but instead of going up 1 over 1, I'm going down 1 over 1. So once again, I will clarify by class time tomorrow for graph B in this series, but these first and last ones are 100% accurate. All right, so there's that so far. Let's keep going. Number 9, and the rest on out. Number 9, this one you can just simply use, you can plug in and just plug and chug basically. F of x equals 1/2 the quantity 2x plus 4 minus 11. So find f of negative 8. So they want you to plug in a negative 8 anywhere you see an x. 1/2 parentheses 2 times negative 8 plus 4 in parentheses minus 11. So to do this in the calculator, you only plug in this piece. Do not plug in this at all. Do not plug that in. Do not. So with my calculator, I'm going to plug in everything we have under my little bracket here. I'll go to my calculation side, and I'll go ahead and just type it in. So it's going to be 1/2. I'll use the fraction that they give me. Right arrow, parentheses. 2, parentheses, negative 8, because that's the value I'm substituting for x. Plus 4, close parentheses, minus 11, enter. And my final answer is negative 17. So that is choice B. Moving on to number 10 now. Number 10 is extremely similar. What they want us to do now is to find the solution. So since this is an inequality, you can't use nsolve, or you can't plug it in and just chug out an answer. What you have to do is graph this. So let's go ahead and graph this, and I'll show you how to read the graph. So going back to our calculator, clear out the graph that might have been there previously. And remember, this is an inequality, so you have to graph it as a relation. So it's going to be 1/4. So I'll use the fraction. And then we have parentheses. 4x plus 12. Whoops, let me move them out of there. Right arrow, there we go. Careful with that. 4x plus 12, close parentheses, is less than or equal to 2x plus 16, enter. Now, it looks like everything's an answer. That's because we're zoomed in too far. So I'm going to go ahead and do menu, zoom, out. And it says, where's your center? I'll make the origin my center, and I'll click once, and there's already my solution. So now I'm going to press escape. The solution is this line that's over here on the left side. So let's go ahead and find out where this line is. We know this line hits the x-axis. So because it hits the x-axis, it has to begin with an x. So looking at our answers here, they all begin with x. Okay, so far so good. We also know that it is going to be a solid line because we have the less than or equal to symbol. So if I go back to my choices over here, they all have the half equal sign. But let's go ahead and look at and really discover what our answer is doing. If I go to menu 5, 1 to get a point on the line, I get the following point, 13 and 0.3. All I care about though is the x value. Look at the x value. It crosses at negative 13. So what that means is that our line, whoops, let me put this back. Our line, which is on the x-axis and hits at negative 13. So we need to have those two numbers in place. I can take out h and I can take out f. Now it's a matter of which symbol do I use. Looking back at my graph, I can see that everything to the right, everything going to the right direction is shaded in. So on a number line, that means everything greater than. So remember, the shading actually matches the direction of the arrow. So since everything to the right was shaded, that means everything bigger than negative 13 or greater than is our solution. So therefore, choice J is the right answer. And going on to number 11, find the domain of the graph. Remember, the domain is how wide your graph is, and it's measured with the x-axis. Because on the right, it goes to positive infinity, and on the left, it goes to and actually makes contact with what lines up to -5. Notice these answers don't have the infinity part, so if I just take that out, I can look at my domain here. But all these answers have x in the front. So I'll go ahead and just do a mirror image and flip this over. And then when I do that, I have the x in the front now, and I have greater than or equal to -5, which is going to be right here. All right? And let's go on to the next problem. That was a pretty easy one. Number 12, here's a good one. Write an equation that is perpendicular to the x-axis and passes through the point 6, -10. Whoops, let me make that line there. There we go. So I'm going to draw a little picture here. I'll use the space on the left-hand side. Let's say we have a grid, a coordinate plane. We know we have a point at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, -10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So for the sake of argument, we have a point right here at 6, -10. We want a line that is perpendicular to the x-axis. Perpendicular means it makes a right angle. If I made a line that went left and right, that would not make a right angle to the x-axis. But if I make a line that goes straight up and down, like this, that will make a right angle to the x-axis. So I know I have an up and down line. An up and down line in this case intersects the x-axis, so it has to begin with letter x. That takes up choices G and J. Well, at what point does it hit the x-axis? It hits at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, +6, just like this point says. So there's our answer right there. Moving on to the conclusion, I believe, of our review. Now for 13, 14, 15, and 16, we are asked to go ahead and find the slope, the y-intercept of each graph, and then write the equation. So let's go ahead and just begin that now. For number 13, my slope. To find it, I will begin with the y-intercept, which is much easier. And it's right here at +20. Boom, easy enough. The slope is how far up it goes and how far over it goes to get to the next point. So in this case, I'll use that very next point on the lattice. It went up +10 because 20 to 30 is a gain of 10 units. Remember to count your units, just do not count squares. And then it went over one box, which is in this case 5 units. So from 0 to 5. 10 divided by 5, that's 2. So my equation is y equals 2x plus 20. Since I have number 15 right next to me, I'll go ahead and just start here on number 15. So I'm going to find my y-intercept first. And that's wherever the graph begins and hits the y-axis, in this case at +80. Now I need my slope. Okay, so I'll pick this next lattice intersection, and I can say it's going down, so that's a -10, because from 80 to 70, that's down 10. And then it goes over from 0 to 2, right there, because here's 2 in the middle. So -10 divided by 2 is a -5. So my equation is y equals -5x with +80 as my y-intercept at the end. Next two behave the exact same similar way. My y-intercept, I'll begin with over here, is at +120. My slope, I'll take this lattice point here, has an increase of 20, 40, because from 120 to 160 is a jump of 40, and then it goes over one box, which is represented by 10 units on the bottom. 40 divided by 10 is 4. So there we go, yeah, 40 divided by 10 will be 4. So now my equation is y equals 4x plus 120. Let me double check everything here. 20, 40, 40 divided by 10. Yes, it is 4. So that looks good there. You make this x a little bigger. And then over here, my y-intercept, the initial point of this graph, is at 200. To find my slope, I know it's decreasing, so it's going to be negative something. I'll pick a good lattice point. Here's one. So it goes down 20, 40, 60. So it went down 60, and then it went over 10, 20. -60 divided by +20 is -3. So my equation is y equals -3x plus 200. And I do believe we are now at the conclusion of our review. So best of luck, and feel free to ask any questions of your teacher before the test. Thank you, guys.